Hey guys, it's Adam Levitan here at FantasyLabs. And it is a major week in the DFS golf community. Love major week just because there's so much action. Obviously, there is a Millie Maker on DraftKings this week, but the cash games are also so much bigger, huge double ups, so much more action in the head-to-head lobby and the 50-50 lobby, and all the other tournaments, the driving the green, the back nine, the $3 tournament, the 300. They're all bigger this week. If you're Peter, the 5K is bigger this week as well. So a really great week to play golf. We're at the homepage here, and you know what? Redesign. No more Peter's forehead. That's a shame. One thing about this major, the British Open, is it's similar to the US Open in that they rotate courses, meaning we don't really have course history here. The last time a major was played or any professional tournament was played at Royal Troon was back in 2004. So I'm somebody that likes to rely on course history a lot, and that's kind of a hole that we're not going to have this week. However, I do think that there is some value in British Open style courses. All the courses in the rotation are link style, don't have a lot of trees, played in a lot of wind, have pot bunkers, have those undulating greens. A lot of the fairways you can run it up onto the green in. So I think a certain style does make sense. And right here, Jonathan Cabezas did a great job looking at who has played well in the British Open over the last 5 years. I think Adam Scott makes a ton of sense in cash. I mean, just look, it's not a coincidence that he's been able to do this in the British Opens. I think Schwartzel makes sense. I think Sergio and Zach Johnson, I think all these guys make sense as specific British Open plays. And when I'm making my cash game, I'm going to lean on guys that I think have pretty good history at the British Open. But when I'm making tournament teams, which is what I'm going to talk about here today, I'm going to try to skew a little bit differently. So let's go to golf models. When I'm looking to make one tournament team or a bunch of tournament teams, I'm always going to create my own model. So I'm going to call this Royal Troon each week and make my own model based on the course. So I'll zero this back out here. Comes through with the default. I will zero this back out and update. And we have 0.00 because we haven't used any of our sliders. Now, one thing that is kind of the chalk or the consensus for British Opens for Royal Troon is that it is a ball striker's course, meaning you don't have to hit it long off the tee. And maybe that's true. But I'm such a believer in driving distance. Not to the point where I only take bombers, but I'm a believer that driving distance gets us closer to the pin, even if we hit it in the rough, gets us closer to the pin, and leads to more birdie opportunities, which is what we're looking for on DraftKings. So just take a look at this. If I make long-term driving distance score 100, the result is plus 3.82. If I make long-term driving accuracy 100, our result is plus 0.6. Just a massive, massive difference. The long hitters score so much better on DraftKings relative to their salary. So keep that in mind as we build our model. One other thing that I really think is important when I'm building my models each week, and especially at the majors when we have so many good players here, and we also have guys we've never heard of, similar to the US Open, the Open Championship. Going to be a lot of guys we've never heard of from Europe, or even amateurs just coming on to the Euro Tour and stuff like that. So long-term adjusted round score is always going to be really important to me because I think it's a unique stat that our opponents don't have access to. Long-term adjusted round score, again, just is a way to compare golfers across different tours, across different conditions. So how do we compare a guy who is struggling on the European Tour to a guy who's been crushing on the Japanese Tour, or on the Asian Tour, I'm sorry, to a guy who is mediocre on the PGA Tour? And I think the best way to do that is with long-term adjusted round score, and it's something that nobody else has access to. So I'm always going to weight that really heavily, especially in majors. So I'm going to give that 40 out of my 100 points. I think most people making their models this week aren't going to weight driving distance at all. So I think there's a ton of value in being contrarian in these huge, large field tournaments, and even in the tournaments that are maybe only 1,000 entries or 2,000 entries. I think in golf specifically, there's a ton of value in being contrarian. And that's not wildly contrarian. That's not what I mean. I mean doing it with thought. And one way I think this week we can do it with thought is by weighting driving distance pretty heavily. There's also rumors of rain, which would obviously help the guys who hit it further because the ball won't roll for the short hitters as more. I do want to weight driving accuracy a little bit here, not as much as driving distance in our effort to be contrarian, but I do want to weight driving accuracy just a little bit here. Even though there's no trees or not many trees at Royal Troon, rough could be a little bit sticky. So far we have 70 points. We have 30 left. I want to go back here and do one more test to show you guys how important I think long-term birdie score is. So we've talked about how on DraftKings scoring, birdies are everything. Birdies are 3 points, worth 3 DraftKings points, while bogeys are only worth -0.5. So having a guy make the cut is the most important thing to me. His finishing position is second most important. Third most important is how many birdies he can make. Just such an advantage there. Even if your guy misses the cut, if he was aggressive, made a lot of birdies or eagles, or even 1 or 2 eagles, can make a huge difference, especially in cash games. So if I make long-term birdie score 100, update this, I get plus 2.46. Let's say a guy's really good at not making bogeys. So I'll give this 100. That's what I want. Well, that's not really what I want. It doesn't really matter. That only raises expectation by 0.29. Let's go back to the sliders that I had here. 40 for long-term adjusted. 20 for long-term driving distance, long hitters. 10 for accuracy. And I'm going to go ahead and give long-term birdie. Guys that are aggressive, guys that make birdie. And by the way, this is this birdie score here. Field adjusted. So, obviously if you're making birdies out there on the web.com tour or on some of these Euro Tour courses, it's a lot easier than making them on certain PGA Tour courses. It's all weighted and adjusted. All right, so that's what I'm going to do for long term. I want to capture some of what guys are doing recently. I don't want to go overboard with it because a lot of guys have only played 1 or 2 tournaments over the last 6 weeks. So I'm going to give it a 10 here. And then I'm going to add in my effort to be contrarian and weight driving distance, I'm going to give recent driving distance 5. So I've used 100 out of my 100 points. Click update, and we get plus 4.06, which I think is really, really strong for a model. Now, note that when you weight long-term adjusted round score a lot, you're going to get a lot of the high-price guys up top. And that makes sense because their long-term adjusted round score is the best out of everybody. So we kind of have to wade through here, and guys that are cheaper stick out to me. So Bubba obviously has really struggled at British Opens, missed the cut the last 2 times, but I think down at 8,000, I would never play Bubba in cash this week. I think Kuchar, it makes a lot more sense there. I even think that somebody like Schwartzel makes more sense in that range for cash, but I think for tournaments, perhaps Bubba makes some sense given how cheap he is. But more interesting to me is Brandon Steele, 6,100. And then guys that I've never heard of, literally. I mean, Colm Shinkwin. Let's see who he is. Okay, 8th at the Scottish Open last week. Impressive. 9th at the French Open the week before. Had some results earlier in the year where he made the cut. And way down at 5,400. I'm certainly not going to X him out. James Heath. Never heard of him either. This looks like he has played really, really low-level golf. Let's go check his field score. Yeah, 19.5%. So I'm going to go ahead and X out guys that are just played no competition whatsoever. Shinkwin's field score isn't great, 40.7, but it's at least reasonable. So I would go through here. I'm happy with this model. I would not use this necessarily for cash. Obviously, I weighted driving distance, which I don't think is necessarily good for cash. But I do think I would use this for tournaments. But one thing I would definitely do is go ahead and X out guys. So if you don't know how to do that, go through here. I'm going to X out Spieth. Really not playing well enough lately for me to be on him. I am going to X out Justin Rose, who's back, I think, bothering him more than he's letting on. Ricky Fowler, to me, is just grossly overpriced. I mean, I can't pay 9,900 for a guy with these kind of results in here. Miscut at the Masters, miscut at the Players, miscut at the U.S. Open, miscut at Memorial. I don't think he's in that tier. Always looking for guys that stand out that I've never heard of. This is obviously an Asian Tour player. I will leave him reasonable field score 39.3. So basically I would go through here and kind of X out some guys that I really, really, really don't like. And then I will go to build lineups. So let's see what Optimize gives me. Stenson, JB, Dustin, Steele, Garcia, and Shinkwin. I think that makes some sense. Certainly would consider that in some lineups. But let's go ahead and generate a bunch of lineups here because it is Millie Maker week and I want to win $1 million. So I like to leave minimum salary cap around 97. Let's make 20 lineups. And our max exposure to a player, I don't mind going all in because that is the way I like to do it. No, I think that with the way that DraftKings payouts are set up in these large field tournaments, going all in on a player or two players or three players and rotating around them makes a lot of sense. So like, let's say I wanted to lock, let me clear this out. Let's say I wanted to lock Sergio and Steele and Shinkwin, and then I wanted to generate 20 lineups around them. I think that makes a lot of sense. So if Garcia, Steele, and Shinkwin hit, most likely we are going to just be all over the top of that leaderboard. And when you get in these top-heavy payouts, that's what you want to be. You don't want to try to cover every square. That's a surefire way to lose a lot of money. So here's the 20 lineups. It gives me 100 Steele, 100 Shinkwin, 100 Garcia, and then it rotates around them. And then if I wanted to get these lineups on the DraftKings, I would just hit Save Lineup. Go to the My Lineups page. It would show me all my exposures here. And I would hit Export. And then when I went to DraftKings, I would be able to upload there on the DraftKings My Lineups page. So that's just a little bit how you can make your own model for the British Open, a little bit about what I'm thinking about for the British Open, how to generate multiple lineups. As always, any questions on this, don't hesitate to email me, ajl201@yahoo.com. And big luck at the Open Championship this week. A lot of stuff on Labs, a lot of articles, podcasts. I think Colin and Peter and Brian are doing a last-minute podcast on Wednesday night, which should be cool. Should have some better weather updates then. So good luck to everybody. For Jerry, I am Adam. See ya.